Alrighty. Welcome everyone to WorkSmart Live. This is Teams for Everyday People, Part 1. I love that Marissa's already doing a little bit of a dance. I'm Dawn Church. I'm WorkSmart's events manager. And we're back today with the fabulous Marissa Wayman, my co-pilot and WorkSmart's marketing manager extraordinaire.
Hello, everyone.
So thank you, Marissa, for being here. Thank you to all of you for listening in. And while I'm at it, a big thank you to our friends at the Durham Chamber of Commerce for coordinating with us to make this webinar and our whole Back to the Future series available to the Chamber members. So with that, today we're going to be talking about Microsoft Teams, which we love to talk about. Marissa and I love to talk about. And this session is going to be all about talking almost in some ways, but talking with video. So we're going to be talking about video calls and meetings. Next week, we're going to run through Teams overall as your collaboration hub, but we're going to start today with the basics of meetings and video calls so that we can show you kind of all the great tools and features within these options to help you decide what to use and when, which brings me to what your options are. You may or may not know this, but there's actually really 3 different main ways to communicate with video, especially within Teams. And those 3 things are a video call, a meeting, and a meeting on a channel, which is an entirely almost different thing. So, and again, all of these have a little bit of a different feature set and a few different use cases. So we're going to talk about those things, but to give you a little bit of a verbal overview to start. So first you have a video call. This is sort of like when you spontaneously FaceTime a friend, or in this case, let's say it's Marissa. It's just a phone call, but with video and totally unplanned. We probably weren't expecting to be on a video call. We probably don't have makeup or hair done, but it's fine because Marissa and I talk to each other 20 times a day and it's fine. But every once in a while, she and I are communicating via chat, and especially for me, I'm like, this would be so much easier if we could just talk this out. So can we hop on a video call? That's what a video call is for. Totally unplanned. All right, so next in Teams, you have a meeting. Big difference is that this is something that's scheduled. So in this case, let's call it a one-off planned get-together with, either Marissa or a few folks. So we can kind of think of this like, for example, this week, Marissa and I knew that because I was getting back from vacation, which by the way, I missed you all last week. I hope you had a great time without me. We needed to set up a time and a virtual place to chat and catch up on anything I might have missed. So easy peasy, right? We all know what meetings are. Recurring meetings can kind of fall in this category, but for sake of simplicity for now, let's just pretend those don't exist. But the third option is Teams meetings on a channel. And if you're unfamiliar with what a channel is within a team, join us next week for a comprehensive overview of all 3 tiers of Teams, one of which is a channel. But in a nutshell, a channel is a page that's within an umbrella team. And this is for a designated constant group of people where they're going to meet and collaborate on a particular topic. So in our case, our channel, we have this channel for the events and marketing team, which that pre-designated group of people is myself, Marissa, and Clay. And we can actually host a meeting directly on the channel. And the benefit of that is when we do it on a channel, all of our notes, all of our meeting recordings, and everything will automatically get stored there. So it's like all the different things that we're working on together, plus our meetings, plus all the things that we did in the meetings is in this nice, neat little channel. And Marissa's gestures are great. And if this sounds a little confusing at this point, hang tight because we're gonna do some visual demos. That's what those are for. And with that, Marissa is gonna start sharing her screen and we're just gonna show you all the things. So send us your questions if and when you have them.
Yes, let me go ahead and share my screen so that everyone can see my team session. Awesome. Like Dawn said, this is something that we get really excited to talk about because we do collaborate so much. And as Dawn pointed out, Connecting visually is really important, especially with someone like me. I make a lot of faces and I talk with my hands. So there's just something you're gonna miss if you're not talking to me on video. Of course, the other side of that is, and Dawn and I were laughing about this morning, without those visual cues, we tend to talk over each other. So it's even better when we can engage with each other. It's not just what you're seeing from me, but way we connect. So bringing that all together, here is Teams. We've been in here before. If you're new to it, this is the desktop experience. You're going to have a navigation pane on the left. You're going to have your chats or your conversation threads right next to it. And then your main window is going to be right here where you're seeing I'm currently in a chat with Dawn. And I'm starting here intentionally because, as Dawn mentioned, we do have kind of this almost like a nesting doll effect of video collaboration. So we're going to start with the video calls, which is really just adding video to your chat. So you'll see in this chat here that we have a video camera, we have the phone, and we have a kind of screen sharing option. These are all functions of a chat. You can audio call just by using this button. These are all going to initiate based on your internet connection. So take a step back and explain calling. Overall, calling in Teams is not, if you want to use Teams as a phone system and a traditional voice call using the internet, you would need a separate phone system. But for what we're talking about today, this is functionality that's just built into Teams. So that the idea of a video call or an audio call or the sharing is that we're doing it as an extension of just a one-on-one conversation, and it's with someone in the organization. Or if you've given someone guest access to your Teams, you're essentially talking to each other throughout your existing Microsoft 365 account. So one thing I like to get out of the way when it comes to talking about calls is when you add audio to a call, or excuse me, when you add video to a chat, audio to a call, that is what a call is. But if you add video to a chat, you can only do that up to 20 people. So already if you're going to invite 21 people, you have to use a meeting. So that's an easy way to figure that out. But up to 20 people, you can use these features. Once you get up over 20 people, these will inactivate. So I'm just going to go ahead and initiate a voice call. I'm going to give you guys the option to see what it looks like when I give Dawn a call. Now I am, all right, so my video isn't working because my camera is having an issue with seeing both Teams and Zoom, but you can see that Dawn is now in two places. She's also in Teams. So, you know, this experience, this feature is going to look similar whether you're on a video call or you're in a video meeting. So that's another great reason to have Teams and Microsoft 365 as a consistent experience. So when I look up here at my control options, you're gonna see this the same whether it's in the video call or if it's in a meeting. You'll also notice that this popped out its own little window. This is a new thing with Teams, and you have to enable this meeting experience. So the idea of having multi-windows in Teams, whether it's chat or a video popped out like this, is so that you can do more with your, whether it's your desktop or a window on the internet or apps on your desktop, you're just able to do more. And so you can actually enable that. A lot of things we're going to talk about today, minimizing Dawn for a minute. But if you go up into your profile picture, or if you don't have a profile picture, this will be your initials. You'll be able to go down into settings, and you'll, under the general, which is that first tab, there's an option down here to turn on the new meeting experience. If you haven't done this, go ahead and do so. It'll require a restart from Teams, but a lot of the functionality that we're talking about today has been recently released as part of this new meeting experience, which is part of some of Microsoft's already planned rollouts for Teams, plus some of the features they decided to roll out in response to the pandemic and the sudden shift of everyone working from home. So just a sidetrack, remember to enable that new meeting experience. But now if I'm going back to my conversation with Dawn, here is my window. Now when
Hey, Marissa.
Yeah.
Real quick.
Sure.
Just so you all know, you might notice this as you're watching the screen, but there is a little bit of a lag because I have my video going through Zoom and then it's also coming through Teams. So I'm actually going to disable my video on Teams. And now you're going to see instead just my picture. And wanted to make sure that you knew what that was so you weren't just like, what's happening with Don's video? But I really don't think you need to see me in two different places. So especially not when one has a little bit of a lag. So I'm still there. I'm still part of the meeting. I've just turned off my video so that we don't have that. You might see my video come back occasionally when Marissa restarts new meetings throughout this webinar, but I'll just be turning it off.
Yes, that's important to note. Thank you for saying that. I didn't think you just disappeared on me. But you'll see Dawn just turned off her video. So I'm going to show you how you can be in control of your video as well. So up here is this little camera icon, very familiar. Right now it has a line through it because I've turned it off. You click on this and it'll toggle back on. Now, if you want to do the same for your audio settings, you sure can. You can unmute and mute yourself. I'm not going to unmute myself so that you don't have the echo of hearing me in multiple places. But here also under the more actions, you have control over your actual device settings. So if you click into that, which you're still in the meeting, nothing has changed, but now you have control of what devices are actually being fed through the video. So part of that is your audio devices. So right now I'm using my PC mic and speakers, but maybe I have a separate microphone. If you see down here for the camera, if I were to use my rear camera, and turn my video back on, you'll now see that there's actually, I have a background up, which is why you see balloons in that little window. But that's actually my video feed that Dawn is seeing. But you can in real time be able to do all that. So I'm going to turn the video back off. This is, when you join a call, you're obviously, as soon as you hit video, you will populate video. So you will have to get into the video to manage that. But if you want to edit your device settings outside of being in a meeting, you can do that just by simply going back to where we were before in the settings. And instead of staying under the general tab, you would just scroll down to devices and you can make those same changes here. Beautiful, right? Let's hop on back to the call. So I showed you how to manage your video, but another really cool thing about video, which every platform is doing, I feel like it's a race against Snapchat's filters, like who can be as cool as social media when it comes to background images. But if you're in a call and you want to, maybe the back of your room is really messy, or maybe you just don't want people to see your Yoda puzzle hanging in the background, because that's what's back there. It's my Yoda puzzle. And you can hit apply background effects. You can blur your background, really simple, or you can choose some of these stock images so that you have a background. I will say that the technology is not quite there to use these without a green screen. So you will have some visible pixelation around the object. They're designed to pick up a human out of this background. So if you're in a group of people, it certainly won't work. So just be thoughtful of using those background images. The other thing that's coming that's not here for me yet, but you might see, because they're rolling it out gradually, as in Microsoft, video filters. So you can actually change the way your video looks without adding a background and without blurring your background. So I guess if you wanted to have like a black and white photo versus like a sepia, I don't know if I actually said that right. So we're just going to keep talking about backgrounds.
That was cool, the same, I think. We'll accept either answer.
We'll accept it, right?
Yeah.
So that is coming, if it's not already there. So there's a lot of options when you have video. Another great thing about interacting this way is not just the video part, it's the screen share part too. If you've ever been working on something and you just want to be able to show what you're talking about, sometimes it's really helpful for me. I can get very confusing. So having a visual aid like sharing your screen, that's what you're going to get here. When you hit that, you don't automatically share your screen. So you don't have to worry. You don't have to panic. Oh no, I just sent everyone on this meeting all my things. What you do is you bring up a sharing window. You can click on that again to hide those options, but you have the option here to share your desktop or a window, specific windows. Right here, you're seeing all the windows that I have open that it's allowing me to choose from. You also have PowerPoint. So if you have PowerPoint slides that you've interacted with recently, it'll suggest those. You can also browse files or PowerPoints that you want to. One thing that is coming that I'm very excited about is PowerPoint Live. So if you run PowerPoint presentations and you'd like to be able to just kick off a presentation from PowerPoint and allow people to interact with you, it's coming. No other details other than that it's coming. Computer sound, if you want to share a video with your team, you can actually use this little button here to share that computer sound through Teams. Any questions about kind of sharing content? I'm going to go through actual sharing of content a little bit more in the meetings section. So just a heads up in case you want to see more.
We have one question that came in. It says, can you kick off a share screen without launching the webcam?
Yes. So you don't have to have your webcam launched. So if you're in a video, if you use the actual start video call, it'll automatically happen. But if I leave this call with Dawn, see you later, Dawn, and I decide to go here instead to this screen sharing option, the first thing that's going to pop up is, what am I going to share with Dawn? So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and share, let's just share my Outlook email. So it tells me that I'm sharing only, and it asks me if I want to talk. So it comes up here, and I have my option to share.
And to clarify, I'm actually just seeing on my window, I'm just seeing her Outlook, and I have a pop-up as well that says, would you like to talk? And you can unmute yourself if so.
And what's really cool about that sharing option is that you can, I'm excited to talk about it, so I'm just gonna jump into it now. Call it, it's the soundtrack to my life, the Teams ringtone. Okay, so we're back into our call, and you can turn your video off. I'm gonna screen share here. So if I'm screen sharing from here, and I decide to go, I'm just gonna go in and open, I guess I'll just open my desktop. I'll have my desktop sharing my desktop.
So while you're doing that, we had a question about the difference between desktop and window sharing. That's if you're sharing your desktop, you're gonna share everything that's existing within the frame of your computer's monitor, basically. If you share a window, it's just that one particular browser or that one particular file, one particular thing, as opposed to everything that's seen on the screen.
Yes, that is a perfect description of what it is. And it's important to remember that, because depending on how many screens that you have and what's on your desktop, you may not want to share everything. If you're in a meeting and you're presenting to people external, you probably don't want them to see all of your chats. So it's important to know what you're sharing. In this instance, I am sharing my entire screen. So if I were to move things around, you can see that. So if I open up my email, you'll see that. But if I chose to only share my window, and I chose window, even if I open something on my desktop in front of Teams, you'll still see Teams. I won't see Teams because something's in front of it, but you will. So here I'm sharing my desktop. And if because I have my Zoom thing over, it's kind of hiding where I can show my presenting control, but there should be a gray box that is in the same place as this screen sharing sign. And it'll actually tell me that I'm presenting, and it'll actually tell me that if I want to give control to somebody, I have that option. Adversely, the person on the other end has the option to request control. So if Dawn is working alongside of me and she says, you're not going to the right place, you'll see, here it is, she's asking for control. I've now given her control. You can see my mouse with my picture and Dawn's mouse moving frantically around the screen with Dawn's picture. Now, in that gray box again, if it were showing in lieu of the Zoom box, I could take back control, or she can give me control.
I just stopped control.
Thank you.
So now you have it back.
Now I have it back. The cool thing about, and I want to show what I just did there too, because that was kind of important and I skipped over that. So I'll share my screen again. But if I go in to share a PowerPoint, you actually have a little bit more control over what you're sharing, in the sense that I'm going to go ahead and share this files. Up here.
So while that's loading, Marissa, we did have a question that came in about sharing PowerPoint.
Yeah.
And the question was, Alicia says, when I've used PowerPoint, a weird screen comes up that I've never seen before. Can you explain how to show regular PowerPoint like I'm used to? So there's a couple different things, and I believe you're going to show both, Marissa. So there's the option to share like you're presenting a PowerPoint, which is what you're seeing right now. And then there's also the option to share like PowerPoint as the application.
Yes.
And there's two different things there. If you still have questions about that, as far as like what the specific pop-up is, definitely send me a chat and I'll see if I can figure out what it is specifically that you're talking about, and we'll answer that.
Yeah, I'd love to know. I opened a PowerPoint here. So Alicia, if this is what you're referring to, let us know. But this is if you are actually using the PowerPoint embedded into Teams experience. So I don't see any notes. I am presenting. I don't see my notes or anything like that. It just shows me my PowerPoint slides. Now, I can navigate forward using these buttons here. Dawn, who is also viewing my presentation, can do the same without affecting my PowerPoint deck. So if she's scrolling through it right now, we wouldn't know that. If you don't want someone to be able to scroll through your PowerPoint deck, that's what this eyeball is. You click on it, and now they can't look ahead. You are the one that controls that. So same thing here. If I were to give Dawn control, or she takes control, she can start moving around and controlling the deck for everyone.
Which I will do.
So you'll see she took control. I can take it back if I'd like to, and then she's leading the presentation. But because I marked that eyeball is gone, it's gone.
So this is from one of our previous webinars. You might recognize the content, but.
And I took it back. So again, if I marked that eyeball, Dawn, if you want to go ahead and take control of it again.
Sure thing.
And I'll just show folks that I can still, now you can see that I can navigate forward, and I'm actually not changing it, the presentation for everybody else. I'm just kind of scrolling through to see what it looks like. Now, if I unshare my content, all I have to do is hit that box again to unshare. And if you get that little window in the bottom right-hand corner, it minimizes while you're sharing your screen. It's you would hit those same buttons will appear. They'll be minimized, but you can still hit those in order to stop sharing your screen or to unmute yourself or to turn your camera on, do all that stuff. All right, so I think, let me double check. I think that's everything I knew it was something I'm not ready. All right, so I'm gonna stop presenting and I'm gonna show the PowerPoint real quick. I'm gonna go back to sharing my screen, but in the PowerPoint deck. So you'll see here, I opened up PowerPoint and now it shows me in a window, or it shows me over here as the actual PowerPoint slides. If I choose PowerPoint as a window, it's going to open the entire PowerPoint presentation. So if I click on that same PowerPoint deck, you now should only see my PowerPoint window, and you cannot see my Teams. And I'm denied access, interesting. But you would be able to go into here and you would be able to go to your presentation and do your present mode. Let me see if I can open that PowerPoint again. Okay. See if I can undo, stop presenting. Okay, share screen. Let me open up a PowerPoint first. Communication in the cloud. All right, give me 1 second, that should open. Let me hide that, I'll open it again. All right, so now you can see that there's a deck. And if I want to present from the slideshow mode, now I have the option I see all my windows for presenting from that way. So that's the difference between presenting an application, the window, versus sharing PowerPoint directly through Teams.
And to clarify, when she enters presenter mode, and the way that she just did, what I see on my end as a guest in the meeting or the video call is the presentation itself. I don't see her notes. So this is kind of really handy, especially if you are presenting something kind of like this, where you might have a lot of notes on different slides and you want to be able to see that as you go along. That's the better way to do that. If you are kind of just like going through and it's really easy, it's a simple deck, maybe you know what you're talking about, you don't need your notes, that tool where you present the PowerPoint presentation as opposed to the PowerPoint application can be really great because it just loads the deck right into Teams. It's kind of a neat feature. And I do see that we have a couple questions that came in. So if you would like to continue on, Marissa, I'm going to read these and see where we're at.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to talk about recording while you do that. So recording is really neat, especially as we do more and more conversations like this. It gives you an opportunity while you're talking and you're in the moment to capture what you need for a couple of things. I like it for reference. Dawn and I do a lot of brainstorming. There's a lot of things that come out of my mouth that I may not remember. So having a recording of it is very valuable. But it's also valuable if we have a meeting and Clay wasn't a part of it. And if he has a question, I can actually just send him the meeting and say, hey, scroll to about 15 minutes in where Dawn and I kind of talk about this whole thing. So it gives us another opportunity for sharing information to cut back on meeting fatigue. But also just to make sure that people can stay caught up to date. And if someone misses a meeting, being able to go back and reference that is also just as important. So when you're in a meeting, you can actually go to this more actions, the ellipses. And in here, you'll be able to start recording. And once you do, it kicks off it kicks it off, I'll show you. It tells you in the corner that the recording is happening. And then once the recording is stopped, I'll tell you up here that it's happening. Once you want to record the meeting, you can just go down here and hit stop recording. Once it's stopped, all of those meetings, all of those calls that have been recorded are going to be stored in Stream. Microsoft Stream is the included video app with Microsoft. You get storage with all of your Microsoft 365 subscriptions. And it automatically does this for you. And then it places it within the conversation. So if you ever want to go back to it, that's where it's going to live. And I'll show you how that happens with meetings as well. I'm going to leave this call because I'm going to show you where the recordings are. And I will say that when I'll show you, the recording has stopped from here. It's saving right now. But once that recording is done saving, it'll appear here. I'll show you, there's this meeting with Marissa Wayman. When the meeting was over, once the video was done processing, it actually shows here. So you can play it from Stream, embedded in Teams, or you can go to Stream. The thing to remember about Stream is that videos are not available outside of your organization unless they have guest access into your Microsoft 365 tenant. So just be aware about that. Dawn, I'm done talking about recordings so far. Do we have any questions?
Yes, yeah. So the question that came in was just clarification around what viewers see in presenter mode. That was the weird window that our friend was getting. So we found it, so that's great. But just in case for anyone else that this might be relevant to, when you share the application of PowerPoint, you can share that you are like working on it, you're editing, et cetera, et cetera. They're going to see the entire back end of the presentation itself. When you enter in presenter mode, all that your guests will see is the actual finished presentation that you're wanting to share. You, as the presenter, will still be able to see your own notes and the next slide and all of those things. It can be really handy and nice, especially if you're like me and can't remember what's coming next on a slide. But your guests won't see that, which is great. So, and then again, if you want to share just the presentation, you don't need notes. You can just load it right into Teams. It'll give you that option for recently opened PowerPoints. And Marissa's wanting to share her screen with me, so I'm going to do that real quick.
I was just opening the PowerPoint so that people could have it as a
perfect, as a visual aid.
So then if I'm just editing it, as Dawn said, you'd be able to see it here. But the presenter mode is actually once you go into the slideshow and then having the screen that shows over here, it will show you the actual slide you're on, the next slide, and then all of your notes down here in the section. Okay. So it's fun to have Zoom and Teams and all the other windows open because I have to remember which ones I'm going to close and which ones I don't want to close so we don't actually lose the meeting. All right, so I got rid of those. Perfect. Do we have any other questions about sharing content or anything about video calls?
I don't currently see any questions in the queue about that, but feel free to send them in. I think we're going to move on to meetings next.
You betcha. Actually, right before we do that, I do want to mention everything we've been doing thus far has been on a one-on-one basis, which is great. But that's not the only thing video calls can do. You can do a video call with more people. You just have to add more people to that. So if you're not familiar with Teams and how to add folks to a chat so that you have a group chat, join us next week. We're going to focus on that. But I'll just show you real quickly. Right here is where you would, if I'm talking to Dawn, but then we decided we wanted to bring Clay into it, then we would just simply add Clay to the chat, Clay's name, a new chat for the three of us will open up here. And then same things. I still have the same options, the same experience visually is here for you to join all those things together. So you might say though, but why? If I have multiple people, why not just do a meeting? One, like Dawn said, the impromptu nature of calls, the informalness is part of that calling, that ease of experience. When we start to talk about meetings, we start to talk about more structure, more capabilities. It's really about the human experience face to face, while also maintaining the content of whether it's the meeting itself, the recording, if you have a whiteboard, the notes, the files you share. It's all about keeping that in that one place that you can work from, whether it's a recurring meeting or an impromptu meeting. And let me tell you a little bit more about an impromptu meeting, because that to me gives you a really good bridge from a video call to a meeting. So let's say Dawn and I are working with Clay and we decide to, we're we're working on something and we decide, you know what, this would really be a good brainstorming session for the three of us. Going to schedule a meeting, going into my calendar, doing all that can be a pain. So there's actually a feature in the calendar. It's called Meet Now, and it's an instant meeting feature to help you skip through all of the steps. Now, when you do Meet Now, when you click on this, you're not going to get that same video window that says you're connecting. It's actually going to stop first, and it's going to tell you, okay, what's this meeting called? So you can name it. And then you have the option to turn your video off, your audio off first. This here, my video is off, so it's not giving me the option. But if I have my video on and I went to go hit this is the blur background settings section. So you can set this prior to going into the meeting. So again, here's a functionality we didn't have before. You can prepare almost methodically before you enter a meeting, whereas when you call someone, you're bombing right into their environment. One thing I will show here that I love about this feature here is this phone audio. So if you're someone who the audio on your computer is not great and you'd rather use your phone, rather than calling in on your phone and logging in from Teams, then you'll have your identity when you're logged in. You'll look as a guest with your name, but then you'll have your phone number just hanging there. So it looks like you've joined the meeting twice. You can actually hit phone audio, which will then tell you, oh, hey, you want to use your phone for audio? Let me call you. And since this is not actually my home phone number, but if you call, if you have this information in Office 365, it'll show up, but you can enter your phone number here. It'll give you a call. It'll associate with your identity. And then you won't look like you've joined the meeting twice. It'll present as a unified experience. That's really helpful when you start to have more meetings and meetings with external participants, because you want to be able to know who they are, especially when it comes to lobbies. And I will explain all of that in a second. I just wanted you to get the feel for starting a meeting impromptu, because there is that functionality.
So while you're transitioning over into the next part, we did actually get a question about external people in a meeting. So there's a couple of different ways to answer that question. The question was, can external people be added to chats, calls, and meetings? And the simple answer is that anyone can join a meeting that they are invited to. Anybody can answer a call that they are invited to. Now, if you want them to have access to an ongoing chat or something to that effect within Teams outside of a meeting, that is possible, but it depends on your tenant and the security settings within your tenant. So it's possible to add and give access to people to all of those different things, even if it's a channel or a team, it's possible, but it depends on how you set up your settings. So 2 different ways to answer that question. I hope that answers the one that you're looking to have answered. And if not, feel free to chat me.
All right, so I'm pulling up a meeting. Let's see. I want to talk to you guys about, once you're in a meeting, the participants. So actually, before we do that, I'm going to tell you about scheduling, because I just told you about Meet Now. And as Dawn mentioned, one of the big differentiators with a meeting versus a call is the scheduled nature. So pretend like I didn't just introduce you to Meet Now. It's not there. I just covered up Meet Now, like you guys can see my hand in front of my screen. But let's draw our attention over to this new meeting feature here. Again, I'm in the calendar on the left navigation pane. When I'm in here to create a new meeting, this is going to look very similar to an Outlook invitation. You give it a title, you'll add your attendees, and I'm going to add Dawn to my meeting. It's really important that she attends, and it's not going to repeat. We'll talk about the channel in a second. I'm going to leave location blank. I'm going to leave everything blank. One thing I do want to mention here is this schedule assistant. It's really cool. It's similar to what's in Outlook, but it pulls in the attendees and it shows you when people are available, and then it gives you suggested times for when we're going to be available that particular day. And you can scroll through the calendar just to see what the availability is in that coming, the coming weeks. You can add in optional attendees so that you can see what their calendars look like. So it does, again, it has that whole I'm here to help you feel for scheduling. So if I go back to this and I schedule this meeting, it'll show up on my calendar here. And when I click on that calendar entry, it'll bring me to this created meeting. You'll see that I can now join the meeting. I can edit the meeting. Down here is the information for joining the meeting. And I'll call it a couple things. This here is a link to join the Teams meeting. As Dawn said, anyone can join. If you do not have a Microsoft 365 Teams account, you're going to be restricted to logging in through the browser, what's called anonymous join. Essentially, you just type in your name when you join. You can join your meeting from your Teams experience, your Teams desktop app, if you do have an account. The other thing you see here is a dial-in number. This is only available if you have audio conferencing additional licensing in Office 365. It's not the same as bumping up to a phone system or a calling plan. It's just an additional licensing that essentially enables you to have this conference dial-in number. Otherwise, everyone is restricted to joining your meeting through a link. So just be aware for everyone on that. Meeting options is also really important. So you'll see here on the side, these are my attendees. If I go into meeting options, this is actually going to take me to the browser so that I can show you. And because I'm sharing my entire desktop, you'll see my window eventually open. Once it opens, what it's going to show you is options for the lobby. It's going to show you options for how you want your guests, or not your guests, but your attendees to interact with the presentation or the meeting. And so for the participant roles, when you're, something went wrong, says Microsoft. See if we can try it again. I'm actually gonna just kick it up from there.
The thing with events, I say this all the time. There's always one thing, at least one thing that goes wrong. That's just the thing with events.
If it's just gonna be this piece, that's fine, because I can. My explanation. Oh, look at that! I was about to threaten the internet that I was just going to verbally describe this to you, and then it decided that was a bad idea. So here it is. You'll see the meeting details, but then here's the lobby. So by default, people in your organization will not have to go into a lobby. And by a lobby, I mean a waiting room, a virtual waiting room before you get into your meeting. Now there's privacy concerns with that. There's security concerns. If people are outside your organization, you want them to stop so that you can let them into the session. You don't want them to do what's called Zoom bombing and just join the meeting without knowing who they are. So you're in control of that. Your organization sets that control across the board, but you can do that, set that per meeting. So if I want everyone in the company plus anyone outside to have to come into a lobby, I can do that. Or I can choose that everyone can bypass the lobby. I can also do the same with just letting callers bypass or announcing when people join or leave. The who can present is also important. If this is a view-only conversation, this is some sort of staff meeting where it's just a presentation of information and no collaboration, you can turn off the option for people to do sharing content. That's what present is. So you'll see the 4 options here that you have. So that's important to know how you can be in control of your own meeting. I cannot be in control of the browser because my Zoom thing is in the way, but so that was here under meeting options. Once we created the meeting, you saw a couple other things pop up. The chat. So this is just, again, this meeting created a little personal chat so that you can associate when you're in the chat, in the meeting. If you're chatting, that thread will remain here. Any files that are shared, any details for the meeting here. Meeting notes is something that is really cool because you can, as you can see, this meeting hasn't started yet, but I can add meeting notes. So if I wanted to go ahead and open this and add an agenda prior to, I can. Same thing with the whiteboard. A whiteboard is a kind of collaborative space that Microsoft has. There's an app that goes along with this, but it is embedded into Teams so that you can collaborate with anyone during, before, during, and after the meeting. As you can see, there's a hello from Dawn. Pretty cool. If you were to open the app, you would be able to see all the whiteboards that you've used. So there's a central app for that. Going back to the meeting notes, this uses the Microsoft Wiki functionality. It's really, really basic. One thing I do warn you is that you cannot export these because it is not a Word document or something easy like that. It is using that Microsoft Wiki, which is specific to Teams. But that's here. Now I'm going to take you actually into the meeting. As you see, Dawn said hello, so now we see that chat. So again, if we know that this meeting is coming up and Dawn wants to send me files prior to, she doesn't have to email them to me anymore. She can just put them here and I can reference them in the meeting and after the meeting. So I'm going to go ahead and join this meeting. Dawn, if you don't mind joining with me. I'm gonna go ahead.
Yes, I forgot I was muted.
I assumed the answer was yes. So I'm gonna go in here. I'm gonna turn my audio off. I'm gonna go ahead and join in. Also, fair bit of warning. At the bottom, you saw a little thing just now that said add a room. This is not the same as a breakout room. What they are mentioning there is like a Zoom room where you have a physical conference room that is set up specifically for Microsoft Teams. They do have that functionality. So if you're interested in something like that, let us know. We can talk through it. We're not going to talk through it today. But welcome to the meeting. So this is a meeting between Dawn and I. It was scheduled. It is now going to show up in the chats. So I'm going to take you back to the conversations. Now you'll see, it's actually going to be in my recents right here. I'm going to pin this so you can see it up here in my favorites. But you'll see it's the let's do it again. So this little icon here shows me that it was a meeting. As you can see, these are some other meetings. And then the ones with the pictures, these are conversations without any meetings. But if I go to the let's do it again, I can see all of that information that we were just in on the calendar. So just another view of the same information. Going back to the actual conversation. Now, if I were to, again, you'll see the same thing. My window popped out because I have that new meeting experience. And then same things you see before. You see my video, you see the mute, you see the share screen. In here we have device settings, same. Something else in here though is the meeting notes. So if I wanted to just go ahead and access the meeting notes, it'll take me right there in my actual Teams window. So we can edit those as we go along. The meeting details just brings up the meeting details, as you may have suspected. Gallery mode is by default what you're going to be in. This is what everybody is familiar with. It's the 9 tiles, up to 9 tiles that you can see. But now that Microsoft has gone from 250 meeting participants to 300 meeting participants, and remember, calling only lets you do video for 20 people. So now you've got from 20 to 300 people. The same 9 video tiles can get old. So this large gallery actually allows you to have a 7x7 gallery view. So you are now up to 49 video participants. They're coming out with something called dynamic view, which isn't available yet, but that's going to be an AI empowered setup so that if 2 people are presenting next to each other, they're gonna put those windows next to each other, so you're watching their video almost like they're collaborating with each other. So let's see what that looks like. The large gallery mode kicks in after the 10th person has joined the meeting. That includes the organizer. That's the difference there. Together mode is, I haven't tried it out yet. It looks really cool. So I actually, I have it up in my browser because I wanted to show this. But together mode is actually rethinking the way that we meet virtually. And it's giving us this opportunity to kind of preserve our mental health when it comes to meeting fatigue, virtual meeting fatigue. We are not used to interacting with people in the Brady Bunch model where it's just a bunch of little videos. We're used to interacting with groups of people and their facial expressions and their behavior. So this together mode right now only has one option, will only have one option, which is the auditorium mode, as you can see here, but they're hoping to roll out things like coffee shop and conference room so we can start mimicking what we're doing on a daily basis, even when we're not remote. So that's a really cool thing that's hopefully coming soon to save us all from video meetings. So that's all under the video settings here. Another cool thing is turning on live captions. If you're in a group of people and you're having a hard time making out, there's background noise, there are options to turn on the live captions. I'm not going to turn those on today because it does require both Dawn and I to put on our audio, and it just makes a sound mess because we're running two different webinar platforms right now. Also, I've mentioned several times that we're using Zoom, and obviously you dialed into Zoom today. Microsoft does have a platform for live events. It's very different than just running a webinar through Zoom. There is I think it's like up to a 60-second delay in the way it's broadcasted. There's a lot of really cool functionality. For WorkSmart, though, we're not there yet. We're piloting internally and trying to figure out how it works compared to what we've been doing with Zoom. So if you're wondering why we're doing this through Zoom webinar and not through Teams, that's the answer. All right, I'm going to take a break there for a second, Dawn. Do we have any questions?
We had a question come in. I'm sorry, I just scratched my microphone. I hope that didn't hurt anyone's ears. We do have a question that came in. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, so I'm going to read it live. It says, your in-meeting options are at the top. Mine show along the bottom of my Teams meeting page. Is there an option somewhere, or does it depend on if your window is optimized?
So the answer is you are still using the older meeting experience. So what you're seeing here is the new meeting window that pops out. So now everything is up here at the top. So once you go into that settings, if you go back into here and you go into settings and you go into the general, if you turn on that new meeting experience and you restart Teams, you'll then have that experience. And as far as I know, there isn't a way to move the bar though. It's implanted there, but I will double check that. All right. Stop me, Dawn, if there are any other questions. Otherwise, I'll just move forward.
Carry on.
I shall. If I show participants here, I'll see here, if we wanted to invite someone, we can. If we invite someone, it will just call them into the meeting. You can manage permissions right from here, and you can download an attendance list, which is cool, but be thoughtful about downloading the attendance list. This isn't an attendance list of everyone who's joined from the moment it started to the moment it ended. This is an attendance list at this point in time. We'll see if Microsoft changes that. If you click here, this is the conversation where I was mentioning. So you see all of the things that Dawn has already said. I can now search through here. So if we continue to use this meeting ongoing, all of the chat is now here for all of our meetings while we're having the meetings. It's pretty cool. This right here is the raise your hand option, which essentially just means that you want to interrupt without actually interrupting verbally, which is probably something I should probably use more often than I do.
I was just going to say that I should do it, and then I talked over you.
We love doing it. It's okay. When you do raise your hand, you'll see it pop up on the participants list, and it'll come up in the order. So if we had more people, and as more people raise their hands, it would start to show you, okay, well, Marissa did it first, and then Dawn did it, so that you can keep order of it. And then you just click on their hands to, you click on the ellipses, the more actions to lower their hand. So you also saw here that I can make her an attendee, or I can kick her out by right-clicking on the participants as well.
Sometimes she gets tired of me.
Never. If I click on the share options, it's very familiar from what we talked about before. The new option here is the whiteboard. So the whiteboard feature is going to, I showed you what that looks like, but if you click on it during the meeting, it just opens up right here, and I'm presenting it. So everyone's seeing what I'm working on, and we can work on it in real time. The changes that we make here are going to be available after the meeting, along with the meeting notes, the chat history, the recording if we set one off. All of that is going to appear there. So it's really, really beneficial when we're talking about these meetings and these conversations and collaboration and generating content. All of that is important to keep in that one place. I'm going to pop out of this for a second. I'm going to hang up our meeting down. And I'm going to take you back into here so you see that it'll show you that the meeting, when did it end? It'll give you the option to rate the call quality. Another feature that's coming out soon, if you don't already have it, is what's called a meeting extension, and that gives you the opportunity to rate the meeting itself. So it's a really good way just to automatically solicit feedback from meetings so that we can continue to do things that are valuable. Microsoft Teams is not about giving you all the cool bells and whistles so you have more to do. It's all about doing more with less, which is why we have these sessions, is really to help you hone in on what makes your work life easier. Speaking of easier, if we're scheduling meetings, going to the calendar to do that every single time can be a pain. So being able to do it right in a chat. So if I go back to my conversation with Dawn, if I go down here into the chat bar and I hit this little schedule a meeting button, it brings me a familiar screen so that I can go ahead and add the meeting right from there. And it'll notify Dawn that it's there. The other place you can schedule a meeting is, get ready for this, this is a huge revelation. It'll be Microsoft Outlook. So if you go into Outlook and you create your meeting, there's actually a Teams meeting that will allow you to generate the Teams information. So again, if you have audio conferencing licensing, you'll be able to have that number. But if you don't, pretend like it's not there. This will be your link, and then you send it your title. This is the meeting, and I know how to spell. And then you just add your folks. And just like that, a meeting occurs in the past. Thank you for letting me know, Microsoft. And now there is a meeting scheduled for Dawn and I. That is 1 hour overdue. But if I go back to my calendar, you will see it on my calendar. Go into it. And again, because it's a meeting, we have all of these features. I'm going to pop back over to the conversations to just show you the difference between, here's the meeting, the conversation from Dawn and I believe this is a meeting, yeah. So the conversation with Dawn and I, when we did the video call, everything happened right here in the chat. There's no meeting notes, there's no whiteboard, there's no meeting details, none of that. Excuse me. So informal versus now we have a formal structure for all of these meeting items. Any questions so far?
Yes, there is one question about meeting notes, and the question is, can you export meeting notes after the meeting?
The answer is no. The meeting notes are not a exportable file. They are a wiki page within Microsoft Teams designed to live in Microsoft Teams. I was looking for a solution. I don't have an answer, but I will continue to look to see if there is anything that pops up. There are ways to send meeting notes in, meeting details into OneNote. straight from your meeting. We're going to talk more about that next week in terms of kind of using OneNote and Planner and things like that productivity wise. So we'll talk more about it then. If I have any other notes on it, my notes on my notes, I'll bring it. But right now the answer is no, long story short. But what is cool, I will say, what is cool about meeting notes that I didn't touch on is that if you do have a recurring meeting, let's say go into this meeting notes for this promo. No, actually, this is not the example I wanted to show you. So hold that thought. I'm going to show you, I'm going to introduce something else to you. I'm going to introduce meetings in Teams, which will show you something that'll help the need to not have to export because everybody will be in the same place all the time. So let's see if this solves that problem.
And I believe, Marissa, you meant meetings on a channel.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
And oh geez, I don't even know what I said.
You have, I mean, we're talking a lot, right? Like eventually we start to trip over our words. So while you are transitioning over to meetings on a channel, there was another question that came in. And the question was, my Teams view does not have the planner or the calendar icons on the left column. See, I'm tripping over my own words now, right? Any idea what I'm missing? So in regards to planner, so if you look at the left-hand bar of what Marissa has on her Teams window, everything from files down, and I think you might have some apps hidden because normally I feel like there's a much longer list, but everything from files down is an add-in feature, and it's really simple to add those in. You just click on that little apps icon in the bottom left-hand corner, and if you want Planner to appear there, you just select Planner and it'll show up on your left-hand bar. You can do that with a lot of different things too. I have OneNote, I also have Monday.com, and I believe a few other things as well. I'm not sure why calendar wouldn't show up though. Marissa, do you have any ideas about that? Because to my knowledge, that should be built into every view.
No, we definitely want to look at that more.
Yeah, I will. I have a note to check into that. And
I think I figured it out.
okay.
I unpinned it and now it's gone. So if you go back and I would check to see if it's not there, and going into apps and trying to find it there, if that will solve it.
And then just repinning it.
So
maybe it was accidentally unpinned. It should be that those top 4 things down to files, top 5 things, I believe your planner moved up a step when you,
yes,
there you go. Yeah, everything down to files should be built in automatically, and then everything else is an add-on. So
yes. And that's a good point here is that when we're in these 3 ellipses, the more actions, and this is more added apps. These are the apps I actually have here. They're just not organized in a way, Monday.com is here. Let's pin it. So now it shows up in here as well, and I can organize what's most important to me. Put my calendar back before I forget where I put my calendar.
Okay. And we will go into all of these apps and adding in apps and a bunch of other things with apps next week. So if you're curious about more about that, definitely join us.
Please do. So when we're talking about meetings for channels, we're taking it back to the very beginning of the conversation when Dawn mentioned channels. So within Teams, we were talking about conversations. We were talking about one-on-ones or group conversations. Teams is a very structured part of Microsoft where you create, as you see here, you create these different teams. And then within the teams are channels that, as Dawn said, are these co-working spaces, virtual co-working spaces, so that you can do things together all in one place. So for here, we have a Teams for webinars. And as you can imagine, the people in this team are actually Dawn and I. So only Dawn and I have access to the channels in here. So again, join us next week and we'll talk more about why you would create certain teams versus having conversations, privacy, all of that. But for the purpose of this, so this is the channel for using Teams for webinars. And Dawn and I are working together, and we're going to do a recurring meeting. And it would be helpful, or even if it's just a one-time meeting, but everything that we're doing with regards to all of our demos within Teams is essentially this project that we are always working on is going to live in the same place all the time. And so we had a meeting called Meet Now and Do It. And so that, because it was associated with a channel, it shows in the channel. And all of the components that were done in that meeting are a part of that thread. So you can see that we started some meeting notes when the call ended. As you can see in this other meeting about do it again, there's some notes. We talked to each other through here. There up here, you'll see that there was a recording in the Let's Do It call. So it's all a part of it. If I wanted to go back into this conversation and send something to Dawn, I can, and it'll all be associated with that thread. So that's a huge benefit of that. The other thing is, if you see Notes tab, and this is where I was saying this might actually solve the problem of needing to export notes, is that if you're working with a team regularly and you have multiple meetings, and they're all in the same group of people, or you want the whole team, maybe Dawn and I met, but now we've added 4 other people to our team because we're just blowing events out of the water and we decided we need a huge team. You don't have to go to each individual meeting to find the notes. You can actually just come here and hit this, it's almost like it's a wiki, but it's similar to OneNote if you're looking at notebooks. These are all of the meeting notes. So here's the Do It Again meeting, here's our notes. Here's the Meet Now meeting, here's our notes. And if I want to mention something to Dawn through here, I can notify her or mention her. And when I do that, it'll actually notify her and she can come in here and see, oh, Marissa made a change to the notes. I need to know about that. If I go back to the posts, I go to the right meeting. If I can find the meeting, which meeting was it? This was the Meet Now and Do It meeting. It'll say that at 3:10, I notified Dawn about Meet Now and Do It in the notes. And if I click that, it'll take me to the notes. So again, we've built this ecosystem around the way we worked. Oh, look at that. I got a notification from Dawn. She mentioned me. I clicked on that notification. It took me right to the conversation and it shows me the notes and I can just click on that and go right to the notes tab. So it's this perfect circle of how we work together. It's pretty cool. The other thing that's really cool about meeting in a channel is the way you invite people. So the channel, anyone on the team has access to the channel. So if you book a meeting in a channel, and I'll show you the scheduling the meeting. If I do it from the channel, just like I did then, it'll actually populate on here. Otherwise, you would click on here and you would say, okay, I want to have the management team in general, or if I want to come down here to the WorkSmart All team and I want to do it for the for our WorkSmart donations committee, you could do that. You pick your channel that way. If I do not add any attendees, anyone on the team can join and they will see that the meeting has been scheduled in the channel. It will not show up on their calendar, and that's by design. If you want it to show up on their calendar, you still have to add them as attendees. But the difference is you don't have to be an attendee. You don't have to be listed here in order to have access to the meeting. Because what happens when I'll go ahead and just schedule the meeting so you can take a look. But when I schedule the meeting and I go into here and I hit okay, this is our meeting, schedule the meeting. When I go into that, what I'm gonna see now is that I scheduled a meeting with no title, and Dawn can now click on that and add it to her calendar if she wants to, or she can click right onto it and join in. This is great for Meet Now. So if I know that I have I need to get a hold of the events team, I can just hop into Meet Now in the channel, and I can hit Meet Now, and it'll try to invite everyone from the channel so that we can collaborate right then and there, and then it'll save everything again in this piece. So if Dawn scheduled one right now for me, so if I click on it, it shows me the team's information. So if I can add it to my calendar, or I can join straight from here. So lots of cool ways to do the same thing. Any questions about that?
We do not currently have any questions about that in the queue, but you all are absolutely welcome to send in more questions, especially since we're kind of getting towards the end of time. So if you have any last minute thoughts or questions around meetings and channels or anything else, send them in.
I think by far the coolest thing when it comes to these recordings is that they embed them right here into the threads. So that if I'm in this team and I wasn't a part of this meeting, but it's on this really cool topic called Let's Do This, and it's only 22 seconds long, I can click on it and check it out. So it's a really, again, this is about rethinking the way that we share information to make sure that it's accessible. I kind of like to think of it as don't store your collaborative files in your personal share because you can't share it. Nobody else can have access to it. But if you put it on your Teams drive where everybody has access to it, the flow of information, you are no longer the bottleneck. And that to me is what the great benefit is in this meeting in a channel. And it can be a recurring meeting. So when you do go and you schedule a meeting, I know, all my notifications, dismiss them all. But you can do repeating meetings. So if you have a weekly stand-up, you can schedule that. It can be custom. Dawn and I have a promotional video time scheduled. It will end in a couple of weeks, but until then, it's a weekly appointment. So that's cool. We can track all of the notes. It's the same meeting, but we can track all of the notes every time in our meeting notes, so we know exactly what we're going to be talking about. There's just it's the same functionality we talked about with the video calls or meeting individually with people or groups of people, but the idea is to really expand on that group of people wrapped around a common task or project, whether it's department, and just making sure that everything is accessible. Give myself just a water break. Maybe not water because I'm done with my water.
Cool. Yeah, so we don't have any questions in the queue right now. But again, if you have questions, please feel free to send them in. As Marissa mentioned, so the cool thing about, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this next week, but the thing with Teams is when you have these pre-dedicated groups of people who are going to be meeting all the time or collaborating around the time, maybe it's HR, maybe it's accounting, maybe it's events and marketing. You have your own events and marketing team. You can set them up with a channel within your teams, and using the Meet on the Channel feature allows for everything, all of those documents, all the things that we're working on together all the time to be accessible within our collaboration hub, which is this channel. We use that collaboration hub term quite a lot when we talk about Teams. So it'll pull together all of your recordings. You can actually watch the recording of a meeting that you missed within the channel itself, so you don't have to go out anywhere to do that, which is really cool. Files and meeting notes are there as well. So if it's something that you're collaborating on all the time, the channel is the right place to do that. Just to kind of like recap the 3 different things that we've talked about today, a video call doesn't have all of these features, right? It's excellent for spontaneous conversation, especially when I'm just like, hey, Marissa, I have this brilliant idea, which happens, every 5 minutes. I'm just kidding. She does that. She has a brilliant idea every 5 minutes, and she just has to get it out of her head. So That's what that video call is for. It's a phone call, but when we can see each other's faces, which is so nice and so refreshing, but it doesn't have all of these supportive tools, because we don't need the supportive tools for that spontaneous call, right? This is picking the right tool for the right job. So, and then when we have that meeting with, maybe so-and-so from accounting and so-and-so from sales and myself and Marissa and Clay, and it's just about this one thing that we're going to kind of talk about amorphously. It's not really connected to other things in an ongoing way. That's when just that regular old-fashioned meeting, but hosted on Teams, is perfect. Now, if it's a group meeting that works together all the time, that's when that channel comes into play. So you have 3 different tools, you have 3 different jobs, and they all kind of work together again. And then lastly, as Marissa mentioned, there is a Teams live events feature. We are testing it out. As an event planner, I'm not in love with it yet, but I might be convinced in the future. We'll see. We are Teams.
A lot of production value. So I could see it being, if you run town hall meetings regularly, and it's more than just a webinar. It's a real engagement. Well, I could see, doing on like a lot of projection stuff where it's people are attending to watch, like a news broadcast, something like that. There's some really cool features. It's just when it's like it seems if it's like an engaged one kind of back and forth, it can be a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, it's a really good feature for broadcasts when you don't need to know who all is attending. So if you just want to host a podcast or a webinar and something to that effect, or maybe a staff meeting, we're actually testing it right now with our staff meetings. It's a good tool for that, but it's not a great tool, I don't think, for it's definitely not interactive, but it's not the best thing for outside webinars yet. It could change, we'll see. But on the note of outside webinars, I'm going to share my screen so that you can see what's coming up, because we have some more events, right? So we're actually coming down to the end of our Back to the Future series, which is a little sad, but it's okay because we always have more fun stuff happening here at WorkSmart. So next week, we hope that you are able to join us for our Teams for Everyday People. Marissa needs to insert her dance break. Our Teams for Everyday People webinar part 2 is next week. We're going to be talking about the 3 tiers for Teams, which is the differentiation between teams and channels and tabs. And then we'll also talk about chat. We'll talk about some file structure and file storage and organization and all these different things to really make Teams your collaboration hub, and all the how-tos and basics of that. So if you have people within your office who want to learn more about how to use Teams every day, this is a great webinar to send to them. So we hope to see you next week. And then the following week, we have a really great event called To Security and Beyond, where we're going to be talking about the cybersecurity fundamentals, but through the lens of tomorrow, right? So cybersecurity, it's a very ever evolving thing. There's some basic fundamentals that we kind of always go back and reference. The 5 pillars of cybersecurity, which Marissa has been talking to me about more. The 5 pillars of cybersecurity, but how they apply to tomorrow, because technology has evolved, how we work has evolved, and so we need to kind of go back to the basics, but with what's happening today, like a Mad Lib almost. And then the following week, I'm actually pretty excited about this particular event. We are going to do a cybersecurity awareness training for all of your everyday people within your office. So we talked to a lot of the business administrators, we talked to a lot of the IT people, and we're like, hey, this is what you need to do for cybersecurity. Go tell your people. Well, we actually want to tell your people for you this time. So send us your people. We're going to talk about how to spot a phishing email so that you don't have those clicks that download all of the terrible things and whatnot. We're going to be phish proof. as well as some other great cybersecurity tips. So this is a really good one to share around the office as well. And then we only have one more event after that, and that's our Wrap It Up event. We were going to do something on VDI, and we decided to put a hold on that for a little while so that we can solidify some other stuff in the background for us. But that'll be it. So September 24th will be the last day of the Back to the Future series, but there's going to be plenty of stuff to come. So
plenty of stuff to come, because remember, October is Cybersecurity Month.
Yes, it is. So we've got lots of cool stuff that we've planned for that. So if you can't make any of these events live, but you still want the content, you can email me. You can also just register for the event on the event center on our website, which is info.worksmart.com/events-center. And if you don't have a pen, that's okay, because we're going to email you tomorrow with the recording, and then it'll have a link to the event center as well. So that's it for today. Thank you all so much for joining. We'll give you a couple more minutes back to your day. I hope you have an awesome time. I hope this was helpful for you. It was really nice to see your some of you folks in the chat who we've been seeing for, virtually for weeks and weeks, but haven't seen in person for months. It's just nice to see your names. So thank you for attending. Thanks again, Marissa, for doing an awesome job. And thank you to the Durham Chamber for working with us too. So we'll see y'all next week.
Thank you, everyone. Bye, y'all.